Okay, we're back, live. I kind of surprised myself here, and all of a sudden we're just going. My internet's been out for a few days, so I've been away for a little while. But now we're back in the flow with Chapter 2, Choose Only Love, from the book Echoes of Holiness, which is the first of 7 in the Choose Only Love series. And I thank you for being here and joining me in this broadcast. It's always an honor and a joy. So, the Cradle of Thought. Part 1. Where are thoughts born? Let's see if you can immerse yourself in divine memory. Welcome, Nigel. It is interesting that this popped up on your phone. No accidents, they say. So welcome. To continue to live as if the thinking mind were the whole makes no sense. Expand your consciousness. Leave that tiny bit behind and begin to let consciousness expand to encompass everything. Begin to see with the eyes of the soul. A beautiful invitation to open out of the thinking mind, open beyond the physical body's perception into the eyes of the soul. Don't think that you need to know what that means. It's really just a relaxation and an opening. Trust that the transmission is inviting you into that resonance, into that flow. Let us begin to know with that part of the self that is beyond the thinking mind, that both informs and is informed. Leave all judgment aside. Don't judge what you'll see or what you'll hear, because you'll see what no human eye ever saw, and hear what no human ear has ever heard and never will hear. So this is kind of an exciting promise that we'll see things that no one else has ever seen before. But also the reminder, don't judge. We can't open to the soul's vision if we're locked into the mind's judgment. And if we judge, we'll be terrified, actually, at seeing things that are beyond our understanding. You will see and hear what no one will ever hear or see for you. Only you can see who you are in truth. It is something no one will be able to tell you, and you will not be able to tell it to others. What is beyond the thinking mind has to be experienced to be known. So there's a particular way that we see beyond the physical body that is unique to us. No one else can do it for us. And no one can even really understand what is ours to understand. So we each have a unique and particular role to play in this reality. This is such a beautiful invitation into our own experience and intimacy with ourself. Not trying to compare or contrast ourselves with others, but just to relax and enjoy our own perception and just go as deeply into it as we can. Where are thoughts born? Where do they reside? Who or what gives them existence? Who thinks what thoughts think? Where does sweetness reside? Where does life live? Where does love dwell? Questions, questions, questions. Questions designed to open the mind beyond the regular thinking patterns. Questions that really call into question our status quo perception and our unexamined way of perceiving things. Every thought must have an origin, a place that might be called the cradle of thought. We return to the consciousness of self, the center that we really are. Follow the wake of consciousness, not the content of thought, but the energy, the feeling of thought. Yes, that's the doorway. And leave the body behind. Don't cling to the idea of the physical body. begin to feel that part of the universe from where thoughts flow. Feel the myriad of thoughts flowing in profusion, coming and going from one side to the other, as if an energetic force sprouts from a center and extends outward from itself, like a volcano from whose nucleus is the center of the earth. Its heat and its force are thrown outward irresistibly, an explosion of vitality that emanates from the nucleus. That nucleus is a source, an alpha. Finding the source in the center of all experiencing, like the eye of a storm. I was looking at a video today of the eye of the hurricane that's off the east coast of North America right now. It's so mesmerizing to see that silent center surrounded by chaos of flowing wind and rain and destruction. And we can find that same eye of the storm within the center of our own thinking mind, from whence all thoughts emanate with an unresistible force from the nucleus, the source, the alpha. Where are thoughts born? Let your ancient memory be free to go wherever it wants, and let remembrance come to you by itself. This ancient memory knows who created it and its value. It knows where love resides, and it is there. To the refuge of divine love, where it will go in search of its safety and its peace. It knows the way. Allow it to live in the Father's house undisturbed. So we just trust and allow the ancient memory of our mind to go wherever it wants, and let remembrance come. We remember the truth of our source because we've never in truth left it. We can never fully separate from it, even in our darkest moments and even in our strongest denial. We are denying the source, even as the source is giving us the power to think thoughts of denial. It's a paradox that doesn't make sense, but has its own internal logic system called the ego that proposes separation is real, and I am here separated. But when we trust and relax, there's a natural flow. I remember Maharishi Mahesh Yogi would teach this in his meditation techniques, that the mind naturally has a draw back to the sweetness of its source when we stop manipulating it and just allow it to go into its naturalness. It follows almost like salmon swimming upstream. It gently and quietly finds its way back to its source. The sweetness and bliss and nectar of being present with ourself, with our source, is irresistible. We resist it. We do resist it, but it is irresistible in truth. Ultimately irresistible. The window of consciousness. There is a place in the universe from which all thought emanates. Again, like the eye of the storm, the nucleus, the alpha, the cradle of thought, as it's called in this chapter. Thought, not to be confused with the act of thinking, which is like a doing, an action, is an effect of divine origin. Anyone who observes thought can know this in a simple, clear way. Thought is a means, never an end. It cannot be an end because thought is not of its own origin. Thought doesn't create itself. Clearly there is something that precedes thought. That something is precisely what we are talking about. Is it a place? Is it just one place? Or is there a place for each person? Why do each have different thoughts? Is each person an independent source? Are you source in yourself? An individual source that creates its own thoughts? The thoughts you think in itself and by itself? On what basis did you conceive them? If each were a closed system, each person was a closed system in itself that creates its own thinking, unattached to other closed systems of thought, what holds these separate systems together? Where does each individual system get the vital energy that is the source of thought? Are each of you an independent volcano with an autonomous nucleus from which you expand outward? Even this, to say each an independent volcano, clearly a volcano is not really independent because it's attached to the core of the earth, and the same source of magma and pressure is the same source for all volcanoes. If you rest in stillness and close your eyes for an instant and suspend judgment, you will see a series of thoughts pass in front of you. This is nothing surprising. It is what it is. You call it observation or witnessing. What happened? Certain thoughts have gone through your mind. In other words, your consciousness is like a window through which you are looking. Everything that goes in front of that window is seen. What doesn't go in front of that window doesn't seem to exist. If your consciousness is like the window of a house and you are locked inside the house looking out, then everything you observe is limited. You are not seeing the whole because you cannot see all the relationships that exist. The further you move away from the window, the less you see outside. The closer you are, the more you see. Who thinks thoughts? What is the relationship between you and that something that thinks what you think? Where do these thoughts, that which is seen through the window, come from? So these inquiries into thinking, who's thinking, classic non-dual inquiries, who is thinking? Can you find the separate one who seems to be creating its own thoughts? And isn't that one itself a thought? And then who is seeing that the thought of myself, that I am a separate self, who is seeing that? Where is that being seen? Well, here it's being calling it the cradle of thought. And who is that? Isn't it yourself? Isn't it you that sees their thinking? Isn't that you that is the source of your own thoughts? And so, can we be the victim of our thoughts? That's what's just coming to my mind. Is it possible when we are the source of them? And also calling into question that we have personal thoughts. It's saying maybe it's more just like a window through which we see certain thoughts and we don't see other thoughts, But they're not so personal, because who is the personal one who's thinking them even? There isn't even that one maybe. Or is there? Take a look. And take a look and see. Is there this separate one who's thinking the thoughts? Imagination and true thought. Daughters and sons of purity and truth. Those are not true thoughts. When you sit alone inside the house and contemplate through that window, you are seated in the house of a dream, dreaming a life, imagining your thinking, giving pictures to everything, creating dream images. Although they are the result of an activity of the mind, these are not true thoughts. They are imaginations that come from sleep, from the dream of oblivion. Outside the house is life. Outside the house is the truth about you and everything. We said that if you are near to the window, you can see more. What would happen if you go through the window and venture beyond it? What would life look like from outside the house? So an interesting analogy. The house is like our separate concept of self, it seems. And as we get really close to the concept of self, we start to see more. But if we stepped right out of it, it asks, what would we experience if we were completely outside of the house? Just a part of life, not separated from it at all by any structure of thoughts. Go out and rejoice in your glory. To reach the desires of your heart is what we encourage you to do. Your desires of your heart. So this is encouraging us to reach the desires of our heart, not fight against them, not resist them, but really open to the very longing, our deepest longing, and let it carry us to the glory that we can all rejoice in. So a beautiful invitation. Going out of the house of fear is what leads you to throw yourself into love. So there we go, it puts a finer point on it. The house is the house of fear, which creates limitation, bondage, and the sense of a separate self, and the invitation to throw ourselves into love, outside all boundaries of fear. Children of love, that's us. You are sitting inside a house from whose window you observe life without getting involved in it. True. I've seen that. I see that. Thinking about life, trying to figure it out, judging life. What's wrong with life? Why I wouldn't want to get involved in it. So observing it without getting involved, yes. I know that position. You are being the created, but not a creator. That means your mental activity is not actually thinking about anything true, just the cycling of thoughts about nothing. This means that you have renounced your power to create. This is hitting home. The choice that we've unconsciously made to become a victim instead of a creator. Life is thought, because true thought is the means through which everything is created. So this is the thought that comes from God, from the divine, true thought, which creates all things, not the repetitive thinking about nothing true, but true thought gives rise to everything that exists. If you have no true thought about anything, you stop creating. If you have no true thought, you stop being who you are, in the sense that you stop expressing yourself. If you stop expressing yourself, you lose the consciousness of what you are in truth, which generates a sense of smallness, vulnerability, and wrongness that makes you feel less and fewer. The time has come to get out of the chrysalis. The time has come to remember again and thus recognize that the cradle of thought is the heart of God. When we return and keep within the refuge of divine love that is God Himself, in the undivided union of the three hearts, then all thought of God will be true thought in your mind, and you will leave forever the limited gaze that arises from seeing everything from the perspective of the senses of the body. So can you feel the juxtaposition here between true thought and what I'm calling now idle thought, or thoughts about nothing? It's such a stark contrast between being with the thoughts, the cradle of thought that is the heart of God, which is truly creative and expressive, and then the thinking mind of the separate self, which is just cycling through old experiences and re-articulating them verbatim over and over again, repetitively. And the thoughts, they seem true, but they're about nothing. They mean nothing. They're judgments in error about a world of separation which doesn't actually exist. And the invitation to get out of the chrysalis is like the house of fear I was talking about before, where we seem to be separate from life. A chrysalis is a bit more of a positive way of putting it, that it's at least a place where we develop and metamorphosize into something new. But now the time has come to get out of the chrysalis, to move on, to come into our true nature and flower into a new being. To think and to be. We leave the body behind. We observe it with kindness and compassion. We begin to take distance from form and understand that shape mimics content. All loving thought of God is expressed in a rose, in a beam of light. the clink of the crystalline water droplets that splash in a pond where the birds stop to bathe and drink. We begin to see from beyond the window. We begin to discover. We're out of the house of fear. We venture into the unknown. We begin to discover that all true thought is of God, because He and only He can create thought. We remember. We remember where sweetness resides, where love dwells, where truth lies. And then we remember that we rose sweetly, looked through the window, opened it, passed through it, and went into the infinity of creation for the joy of our souls. We no longer look at creation from a passive place without relating to it or anyone else. Now we remember that the truth is revealed to us in the relationship of the three hearts. That's the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mother Mary and your heart, my heart, three hearts united. We no longer waste time trying to know ourselves, God, and life. We know in the only way that can ever be known, in solitude. Solitude here is another word for union, I would say. Oneness. Now we are the observer, the observed, and the relationship between them. We are the creator, the created, and the relationship between them. We are one and triune. Now we recognize with happy astonishment that what has happened was nothing but this. Our self was searching to know itself and looked at all things without realizing that it was in a direct relationship with God, source of all things, cradle of thought, the whole of everything, where we would know ourselves because all true knowledge comes from union and relationship. Now we recognize that we are the cradle of thought and are also the relationship between the mind that thinks what it thinks and the thought that is thought. The mind that thinks what it thinks and the thought that is thought, the relationship. We are in the cradle of thought, resting there. This relationship is consciousness itself, because it is what allows the relationship between the observed and the observer to exist. Consciousness allows for the observed and the observer to have a relationship. Everything is consciousness relating to itself. Between the thought and the thinker, the relationship between the thought and the thinker. Now the self, who is the Son of Truth that is always true, says joyfully, I think as I think because I am who I am. I am the cradle of my thought. I am the one who thinks what he thinks. If I am one with God, my thought will also be one with him. If I am one with love, my thought will also be with love, because of what I am. Thus, children of the Most High, claim your power in creation and return to the refuge of love, recognizing that you, and only you, are the cradle of your thoughts, in the same way that God, and God alone, is the cradle of all truth. So starting at the thinking mind and following it, tracing it back to its source through the sensations of thinking, the energy of thinking, settling back multidimensionally into the source of thought itself, the cradle of thought. The cradle of thought we begin to see emanates from God itself. So God shines forth as an infinite field of mind. We could call it the cradle of thought, mind. Mind is not thought. Mind is just mind. Mind is the space in which thought can appear. And there, in mind, we are knowing our relationship with God, the Creator, that's our source. So that's the relationship. The beautiful relationship of an infinity with a source infinity. God is the source infinity that emanates forth as an infinite mind, which then contains all thought. Here it delineates true thought, which is from God, from love, with separation, fear thought, which is of the separate human ego mind, and has no effect, actually. It only affects itself, and it itself has no reality, so it doesn't affect anything in truth. The heart, the triune heart, which knows itself in oneness, rests into its Creator. So simple, so beautiful, so soft, so present to itself, loving itself, blessing itself. True nourishment from the Most High. And just in a very relaxed state here now. Grateful for whoever's here joining, and just praying for your unification of mind and heart in God. Sending the true blessing, the true well-wishing. The one mind heals itself when it is recognized. The source of all life is here now. Just resting in that to whatever degree it's available. And thank you so much for being here. And I'll connect with you again soon.